All these rejections from the middle Bollinger Band.
Resistance we're going to need.
If you actually see here, we get a
And we'll look for a healthy higher
I
low.
would not
don't have
be
the
convinced
full
to enter a long trade.
Hello everyone, hope you are well. We're going to be looking at Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, BCH, XLM, BNB, ETC, ZRX, NEO, ADA, and XRP. These were voted on by members. So that's what we're going to cover. Going to be looking at the weekly charts down to the daily. Probably not going further than the 4-hour time frame for most of these names because they are all in real tight patterns that are all using those larger time frames to be the clearest picture of what's going on. After that, I got some video. I went to a butterfly sanctuary today, saw some cool stuff at the end, and let's get started. So Bitcoin on the weekly time frame at this point, we're seeing healthy daily consolidation, and we're wondering, is this our weekly lower high, or are the bulls just seeing healthy consolidation before looking for continuation? So I am not confident that our weekly lower high is set until we lose the daily uptrend. That has not happened yet, so the bulls are still in control. Increasing bull volume is a great sign. Remember that pattern we were watching from 2 weeks plus ago of declining volume on this weekly chart? And we said a spike is imminent. And look at the spike and the follow through that we have gotten from this volume. So really nice indicator, volume alone, letting us know that some volatility and action was going to be coming. It certainly followed through. And here's the daily chart. Healthy consolidation at this point. We have our daily higher lows to be watching. And at this point, the odds of the continuation, yesterday I did the video with 3 scenarios. Scenario 1 is just healthy consolidation before continuation like the last time. Scenario number 2 was the potential of an equilibrium, and scenario 3 was a lower high and a lower low. So scenario 1 after today's action for me is less likely. Just the sense that we didn't get a whole lot of follow through. We could absolutely still see a bull move to save this move. And what I'm watching right now is something that one of our members has pointed out, and that is the fact that futures are going to begin opening up for trading again in about another 2 hours, I believe, 6 p.m. Eastern. It's currently just after 4 p.m. Eastern. That's an area where last time it happened, we saw a spike in volatility just before and then just after those futures went live. So that's something to be keeping an eye on in the short term. Again, if 6 o'clock comes around and we see a volume spike, we know that that is most likely the scenario and the reason for that. It's the futures opening back up again. So at this point, the 4-hour higher low pattern is still intact. So if we lose the daily 4-hour higher low pattern, again, it's just a continuous shifting of odds of what is the most likely scenario to happen. If we lose the 4-hour higher lows, the odds that we see either a daily equilibrium or a daily lower high and lower low will increase. That will become a more favorable scenario with a loss of the 4-hour uptrend. We are still holding 4-hour exponential moving average supports, and you can see we're not too close to a bear cross because we are holding those levels. The higher lows on the 4-hour, 8,065, 8128 to support levels. So if you wanted to move up a stop level, I had my stop below 8065, and we could now move it up to 8128 if we wanted to be more protective and save that extra, $50, $60 of BTC price to the downside. And in terms of resistance, we did see a bull break of a couple resistance levels, but look at this top we have where we topped out at 82.86, 82.90, 82.87. So that right there is 3 tops in a $4 range back a couple days ago, 726. And here we are again, the bull move rejected from that level from 82.90 essentially. So we can call that a quadruple top at this point. And as we know, and what we saw on the daily time frame before this move on the daily even started weeks ago, it was the very clear resistance and the 4 or 5 tops at 6,800. That level broke and we saw another leg up. Again, I would not consider this to be anywhere near that kind of bullish reaction if it does break. The point being it would be notable and we would likely see some shorts have to cover. So what was the red flag on the last attempt just last night after the video where we saw a bull move, we broke some resistances, but we rejected? Number 1, being aware of all those resistances at the 82.90 level. And number 2, the hourly chart, we saw, actually the 15-minute is a better view, where we had the bull move. We topped out, healthy consolidation, no red flags, lower high and lower low. So as soon as we see that lower high and lower low after rejecting from a previous triple top, and here it is looking back on the 15-minute, all these tops in this area, that's definitely a red flag for short term. And that's why we saw a little bit more profit taking and a little bit more extreme moves to the downside. We're still seeing the 15-minute the 15-minute RSI hitting oversold being a good area for a bounce. Now, there's been a couple times recently in the past few days where we've hit 15-minute oversold RSI, seen a weak bounce, and then dropped right back down to a lower low. That second lower low hasn't gotten a lot of follow through, but it has given us oversold RSI levels. And here's yesterday's example where we hit RSI, just hit oversold, weak bounce, and then that second leg down is where, and if you're looking at the low of these wicks, not the closes, that RSI would have punched pretty clearly below 30. And then here again today, where we had our low, the RSI dropped below 30. We dropped down to a lower low. The bears got no follow through, and then the bulls took back over the 15-minute momentum. So the 15-minute time frame, if you're looking for entries, is useful, absolutely. And for right now, I'm just patiently waiting and watching the 4-hour higher lows. And as long as they hold, the bulls are comfortable. We're getting to a point where we're either going to see a loss of the 4-hour higher lows or a clear break of this 82.90 resistance and a head back up to our 84.88 recent high. So overall, bulls still comfortable. We're cautious as bulls because we know that we could be in for further consolidation on the daily time frame. And as of right now, I still have my same position that I had yesterday, entered it on that consolidation in the upper 8100s, seen a little bit of nice profit to the upside, a little bit of a decent loss to the downside in this fluctuation price the last 24 hours since the video, but none of my levels have been hit. My sell targets, which are going to be over 8,500, have not been hit, obviously, and my stop has not been hit because we still have 4-hour higher lows. So checking in on Ethereum, how does Ethereum compare to Bitcoin? The weekly time frame on most of these altcoins still has a lot to prove. Again, this is, if I were a bull, I am not comfortable on this weekly chart. I say, oh man, are we about to see a bear flag and another leg down? That's my mindset, because the fact that Bitcoin bounced so much stronger on its weekly chart is definitely concerning, because I know that if this correlation stays similar to how it has been over the past few weeks, if Bitcoin sets its weekly lower high and has to see some healthy consolidation, we don't have anywhere near as much space to work with for ETH. It would require a move down to 404 to see a bear break, and at this point that's about 15% away, whereas for Bitcoin to see a bear break on its weekly time frame, at this point we are about 20 plus, 25, 30 plus percent from that level. So Ethereum on the daily chart continues to tighten up. We've been watching it get real tight, and we have multiple inside bars now, I believe. Got to double check that, but higher lows, lower highs, and inside bars do currently, actually we did break it bullish. We broke it bullish by 36 cents. Obviously not a lot of follow through. So we can still zoom in and look at it on a tightening range, the declining daily volume very clear. Look how low that volume was yesterday. That's actually, see, when was the last time we had daily volume that low for Ethereum? And the answer is, it has been a long time. That volume was extremely low. Obviously this is only on Coinbase, but 19,000 volume. And I look back at some of the previous tiny volume days, and it was still a lot more than that. We have to go all the way back to February to see volume days that low. So it's getting low and tight. The 4-hour time frame is an equilibrium. So I highlighted in the video yesterday, if you wanted to zoom into the 4-hour and get more clear levels, you could, and you can do that yet again. This is still the same little bull move, so I'm not putting a lower high right here. I'm saying resistance is 471.37 and support is 462. That's currently the range that I would be watching, and we should see a break likely within the next 24 hours, a clear break on this 4-hour time frame. Litecoin on the weekly time frame, same scenario with a very weak bounce attempt. Absolutely a potential bear flag. If I were, drawing this pattern, it would be a very clear weak bounce. And something that I use in stocks as a gauge for flags, whether it's a bull flag or a bear flag, is the exponential moving averages, the 4 and the 8 period. They're a lot more responsive than the 12 and the 26 because there's obviously less time factored in, so they're a bit more volatile. But I say to myself, just as a rule of thumb, if the 4 and the 8 exponential moving averages are still support, there's still potential it's a bull flag. And if there's still resistance, there's still potential it's a bear flag. And I haven't been using those for crypto, but it's also almost ingrained in my mind at this point where I know where those exponential moving averages would be. But that's a good one to keep. If you're asking yourself if it's a bull or a bear flag, throw those on your chart and see where it stands. Again, if for people newer to flags and getting more comfortable, what's a flag, what's not a flag, that's as good of a rule of thumb as I can come up with. Daily time frame, tightening up, low, high, higher low, lower, high, higher low. Same thing. We got an inside bar bull break on the daily. Why did it not follow through? I'm assuming, I'm not going to go back and micromanage here on those tiny time frames, but I'm assuming that both Ethereum and Litecoin broke their daily inside bar bullish right as Bitcoin was topping out at 8,290. And then as Bitcoin began to pull back, that ended up being a bit of a fake out for ETH and LTC. So here we are still in a tightening pattern. Even though we did break bullish, have to take it with a grain of salt if Bitcoin's not joining the fun. And at this point, I'm watching support 83.41, 82.51, and a bit of a double top 85.15, 85.25. So still in a very tight range. Same thing here. Probably looking for a break of this range. It's so tight within the next 8 hours or so. Let's see if 6 p.m. Eastern gives us this volatility spike, because these names, ETH and LTC, could be poised to get a break of these tight time frames sooner rather than later. BCH, the bounce on the weekly chart is a bit better than those other two. So it is standing out as a little bit stronger, still not very comforting for the bulls, but we have the tightening pattern, and here's the bull break, and it's following through a little bit better. So just comparing, how is today going? BCH is having a better day than ETH and LTC. It got the break, it didn't get a ton of follow through, but it is still above the inside bar level that broke, whereas those other two names are not. They fell back down. So the 4-hour time frame is a little higher low, higher high pattern. The bulls are in control as long as 814.53 holds, and resistance is 839 and then 860 as the next two levels that I would be watching. So if I had to rank these four right now, Bitcoin strongest, BCH number 2, ETH and LTC pretty similar, but I believe I would put ETH above LTC. And if I just want to get a quick answer on which is stronger, compare the ETH LTC chart. And it's actually looking like LTC is a bit stronger. That appears to be the case. Either way, they're both weak, just comparative to each other. Litecoin is a bit stronger. So now let's get into these regular altcoins that are not listed on Coinbase. So XLM is definitely looking a little bit toppy. Whenever I see a chart like this, even though there's absolutely a ton of bull volume and we've seen a great move, you got to be cautious because this move is 5 weeks old at this point. We've seen huge gains from the lows to the high, about 100% move, and the upper wick shows us profit taking. So I say to myself, if we lose the daily higher low pattern, that's a red flag that weekly consolidation is going to be occurring. And when the weekly consolidation occurs, we're going to absolutely look for a higher low to form because of the magnitude of this bounce. But if we see this break, and right now I'm looking down at 2954 and 296, a little double low. If we break those levels, we're going to be looking at the potential shift in momentum because we have our high, low of that consolidation. The bulls had a weak attempt to get back up there. They were unable to do so, and now we're pulling back down. So if we look at the 4-hour time frame, we can see that we are just losing higher lows right now and just starting to shift some momentum. And we'll see if that shift in momentum carries over onto the daily time frame. We had our high, low, lower high, higher low, lower high, bear break just now. So the break of 3083 was a bear break. You can see the increasing bear volume, and there's a lot of space before the next support down at that 295 level. And the hourly RSI would be oversold by the time we got down there. So would expect, especially after 5 red candlesticks in a row on the 4-hour time frame, that before we see a break of 295, we would likely see a bounce and set a lower high compared to 3.2. So overall, still holding on the daily chart, still holding exponential support, still holding higher lows. It's just giving us enough consolidation for us to be cautious and be protective and move up stop levels because the weekly chart is a bit extended. BNB USDT, so we had that beautiful hold of the weekly higher low pattern, just barely held it by a couple pennies, and some decent follow through for the bulls this week. We are getting a little bit toppy. We're starting consolidation right now. So it's the same scenario where everything I just said on XLM, because this daily chart has seen 5 big green days in a row and is a bit extended, where we can, just be cautious for some healthy consolidation. The 4-hour time frame pulling back. I would expect a lower high on this bounce compared to our recent high. And this is the kind of setup where I would look for a potential equilibrium on the 4-hour if we get a little bit more follow through. If the bulls can get it up to 1440 or so, I would say a 4-hour equilibrium is the most likely scenario. If I were in this trade, I believe I highlighted it yesterday and I said a loss of the 4-hour higher low pattern will be very clear. We had our low of consolidation, an inside bar. The bulls broke it bullish initially and then faked out and dropped down to a lower low. So I personally would have liked to have been out at 1414 if I was being, really protective. and didn't want to keep holding for a swing. But here's the price right back up above that level. And again, a 4-hour equilibrium does appear to be the most likely scenario. Although if we stop right here and pull back, this could be a bear flag. So I do need a bit more follow through before I say that that equilibrium is forming. So I want to see it again, 1440 plus, to see a bit more follow through. Hourly time frame, still a downtrend. So we need the hourly, well, we did get a little bull flag there, but we need the hourly trend to continue with higher lows and higher highs for us to be confident that this 4-hour equilibrium is going to form. And overall, the daily time frame now, we are anticipating a higher low to form on BNB because we broke the lower high pattern on some good bull volume behind it. And we can see the daily exponential moving averages are about to cross bullish. Last time that happened was a couple months ago. ETC USD on the weekly time frame also still tight. So we have our clear lower high pattern. It's a lower high, lower low weekly chart. Our last support was established down at $12. The bulls are trying to form a bull flag here. Very brief consolidation. We have a triple bottom, 1565, 71, 73. So not even a triple bottom, but just clear little higher lows. And the bulls are trying to see a continuation move to break resistance of $19 and try and make our way back up to the next level of 25.74. So still a lot of work to do. It's a clear lower high, lower low pattern. The bulls are trying for a little higher low and a break of the lower highs to shift this momentum back in their favor. And the daily chart is tightening up really nicely for a clear pattern. So I would say if I were going to be watching and I was not in a position at this point, I would need to see a break of 1744 for the bulls to start to prove themselves. And then we're looking up at 1839 and 1899 as the next two levels. That's if I want to get an entry. If I want to be extra patient, I'm waiting for the weekly time frame to get that follow through over 19. Any bear breaks, clear support level right here. If we break this 1565, 1571 level, a bunch of supports between 1565 and the low 1570s, that would be a potential bearish entry opportunity with a clear, you could almost call this a descending triangle pattern with our horizontal base of support, and it's just clear lower high, potentially a lower high. So I would watch the daily descending triangle pattern. Bulls need to break the lower high pattern. 4-hour time frame getting real tight. Equilibrium on the 4-hour as well. All depends on what time frame you're watching. So I'm watching the gold sector and miners. I'm watching GDX and GDXJ on the monthly time frame because there's a year-long equilibrium playing out there. And we get plenty of breaks of tightening patterns on the 4-hour and the daily and the weekly even. But because I am interested in the monthly equilibrium, I'm ignoring all of those signals until the monthly chart gives me the break. So you need to determine, which time frame you're looking at. If I'm playing a pattern on the daily chart and I want to make it a swing trade, then I need to be making my plays and my levels based on that scenario. So if I'm, looking to enter on the daily pattern, maybe looking at the 5-minute time frame is only going to give me some false signals if I'm not looking at the bigger picture and I'm too zoomed in under a microscope. So it's important to stick to the time frame for the pattern that you're watching. ZRX BTC, and the reason I just said that is because, it's a clear 4-hour pattern and I could act on this if I wanted to, but if I'm waiting for this daily tightening pattern to play out, I'm not going to act on that 4-hour pattern. ZRX BTC tightening up here as well. Theme of the video is tightening patterns. High, low, lower high, bulls trying to form a higher low off of 12.9. Not convinced that they have done so just yet, but there's a nice little lower wick off of that level. The daily time frame needs to see a little higher low and higher high for us to be confident that our weekly higher low has been established. So at this point, I would say key short-term support 12.9, resistance is 15.4, and then we would be looking up at, there's a bunch of resistance levels. Every day was a lower high, so you could pick out a bunch of levels within here. And you could also say it's the potential of a bearish head and shoulders pattern that we have to be careful of. And that pattern would look like the left shoulder, the head. If we set a lower high here and then drop down and break that support, that's going to be a loss of the daily higher low pattern on this bounce attempt, and that would result in the weekly chart heading back down towards this low of 9.7. So that is a pattern to watch on the daily. We're still very likely to form a higher low on the weekly compared to 9.7. It's just a question of whether we're forming it now or whether we're going to see another leg down. And everything that we're seeing on the daily chart just now is saying that the bulls are comfortable with this 12.9 support, and only thing to change that would be a break of this higher low on the daily. Neo on the weekly, again, another weekly chart that is just ugly. The bounce had no follow through for these bulls. Clear lower highs. We have one support on the weekly to be watching. That support's down at 27.03 and resistance is 48.90. So a huge range on the weekly that we're still trading within. The daily chart is tightening up just like everybody else. So our high, low, lower high, higher low. And that's one where I would call the lower high and the higher low the same candlestick. A little bit of a double top, 35.67. But because that other resistance, 35.75, is only 8 cents above that level, I'm going to choose the higher of the levels because the last thing I want to do is enter on a bull break of 35.67, get triggered at 35.70, and then have the price reject from 35.75, which is right after it. So I will always default to the higher of the two resistances if it is a close level. And if I'm using a stop level, I will always default to the lower of the two support levels if they are very close to each other. So here I would be watching very tight range, 32.21 support and 35.75 resistance on the daily chart. You can see it's a little bit of a mini equilibrium like so many other individual names we're seeing. ADA BTC, weak bounce attempt on the weekly. This is actually ADA USDT. Everything's been in USD aside from ZRX. USD or USDT, that is. Support is down at 11.3. Resistance is up at 19.66. So again, this bounce isn't really proving much. The daily chart's nice pattern. I like the clarity of this pattern. High, low, lower, high. Just barely a higher low, almost a double bottom. So bulls are trying to hold 15.5 and 15.4. If we lose those levels, it's a potential short-term bearish entry. And I say short-term because I would anticipate the support to still hold of 12.2. So I would only be looking for a bit of follow-through to the downside, but then I would expect the bulls to show up defending that support level. And resistance very clear at 18 and 19.66. So another one that's tightening up, daily inside bars, and trying to hold this higher low pattern, but close to seeing it potentially break. Closer to a support break than a resistance break. So whenever I'm looking at an equilibrium pattern and someone says, what's more likely to happen, I always wait for the breaks, but I can shift the percentages of what's more likely to happen just by, what percentage drop would it take to break support compared to what percentage bull move would it take to see a bull break. And obviously we're much closer to breaking 15.4. We need just about 1 here. And if we break 18, we're going to need about 1.7. So a big difference between those two. XRP USD, weekly chart, probably the weakest bounce that we've looked at yet. Clear lower highs and lower lows in this consolidation. And just trying to hold a base of support, bulls have proven absolutely nothing on this bounce attempt. Still very tight here with the low high, higher low, lower high, higher low. So the range I'm watching right now with multiple daily inside bars, support of 4.44 and resistance of 4.7. Break of 4.44, we look at 4.38 and then down to 4.3. And with a bull break, we're looking up to the high of the bounce of 5.2467. So lots of daily inside bars to be watching. If you want more higher risk, higher reward, you can enter the breaks of the daily inside bars and then hope that that leads to follow through to break the tightening daily patterns. And otherwise, you're going to be patient and wait for the daily patterns to break. So my game plan, again, just hold my BTC anti-FOMO position. Got to trademark that eventually, anti-FOMO. But holding that with no plans on doing anything otherwise. If we get a bull break, I might add a small position, but I don't feel any need to go, real heavy into my account when we are pretty extended on the daily chart over the last 2 weeks. So if we were to break 84, 88 over the next, day or two, probably not going to risk a significant portion of my capital. Probably just going to keep it to the partial position that I have to remain protective. And again, the reasoning for that is my weekly target on this initial move from 2 weeks ago has been hit. So that's where we stand. I hope you all continue to do good things out there. Let's see. What am I saying? So that's it. I hope you all continue to do good things out there. We got a little bit of a butterfly and bird video coming your way. And I'm going to head to the beach and eat some sushi. And we'll see you all tomorrow. Hope you're fantastic.